Bouncing is a term often used in the recording industry to describe moving audio within the DAW by means of re-recording. You're already familiar with the bounce or bounce-to-disk functions in Logic and Pro Tools. The names of those functions came from this term. Bouncing is also an important step in capturing a sound or instrument that has been created with MIDI. There is a point in any production when a permanent recording of the sound is needed. If a project is transferred to a new system that does not have the same software synth available, the MIDI data cannot create the same sound. The best way to ensure that there will be an identical sound with or without the software instrument is to record the output of the instrument to an audio track. When working on a production, you should plan on bouncing any instrument or MIDI track to audio tracks once the arrangement is finished. The first step is to identify the MIDI or instrument tracks. There are a few ways to do this. You can look at the track icons and colors, for example. This is not the best way because it is possible to customize these later on, as in this example. Another way is to zoom in on the regions and look for the lines and dots that represent MIDI data. However, the best and most efficient way is to look at the track types in the mixer. After identifying how many instrument and MIDI tracks need to be bounced, the next step is to create a new audio track for each bounce. The track type will be audio, and the format will be stereo, since our source, the software instrument, is also stereo. You can always sum the audio to mono later on if you decide that is appropriate. In this dialog, I can also select the input. Checking the ascending option will create tracks with ascending inputs. In this case, bus 15, bus 16, bus 17, and so forth. Outputs 1 and 2 is correct because we want these tracks to go to the output track so we can listen to them later on. Once the tracks are created, you may want to move the audio tracks so that each one is directly below its source instrument track. This will help you with the routing and signal flow and will also keep all of the tracks in order as you work. The next step is to name the tracks. Remember, each audio file and region will be named based on the track name. In this example, the instrument track has been named Cowbell MIDI, and the audio track will be named Cowbell. Keeping the instrument names the same indicates that the two tracks are related for organizational purposes. Adding MIDI to the instrument track simply differentiates between the track with the MIDI data and the audio track. While Logic will allow you to create multiple tracks with the same name, Pro Tools will not. Naming each track with a unique name is a good protocol to follow. It is much less confusing to have different track names. The next thing we need to address is the routing. Each instrument track needs to feed an audio track. To accomplish this, we need to route the output of each instrument track to a bus. Then, the input of the audio track needs to be set to that bus as well. In this example, the inputs are already set. Remember, the first one was chosen and the ascending option was selected. Now we need to route the outputs. You could click on the output for each individual track and select each bus. However, since the inputs are ascending and in order, there is a shortcut. Simply select the instrument tracks whose outputs you're about to assign. Then, before clicking on the first output, hold down the Shift and Option keys and select the output. Be sure to press down the keys before clicking and hold them down until you have let go of your trackpad or mouse. This key command sets all selected channels to ascending inputs or outputs. This is much easier and faster than setting them individually. The next step is to bypass any processing on the instrument track. At this stage, the goal is to bounce the dry sound, meaning just the instrument. You don't want to lock yourself into processing that you may want to change when you get to the mixing stage. This Cowbell MIDI track is a good example. If we were to record the compressed signal, we could not uncompress later. So the plugins need to be bypassed or deactivated while we do the bounce. In this example, there are 4 plugins on the Cowbell MIDI track. 2 are active, the blue ones, and 2 are inactive, the gray ones. The inactive ones are not being used anyway, so we will remove those. The active ones simply need to be bypassed. Option click is a quick way to accomplish this. The last step is to raise the faders on the instrument tracks to unity. If a fader is set at -7.2 decibels, the signal being sent to the audio track is being recorded with gain reduction. Again, Option-click will set the levels at 0. This key command is the same in Logic and Pro Tools and works on faders, pans, and sends. Now, we are ready to record. Since each instrument track is being sent through a separate bus to the audio tracks, they can all be recorded at the same time. Also, having the click on or off does not matter. It will not be recorded unless it is being sent to one of the buses being used. This process will work in any DAW and even works when using outboard MIDI modules with an analog console. Once the recording is done, the plugins from the instrument tracks can be moved or copied to the audio tracks if you wish. That will allow you to hear the processing without being committed to it. In Logic, Command click and drag will move the plugin. Command Option click and drag will copy it. Now the instrument tracks are unused, meaning we no longer need to listen to them. However, we want to keep them in the event that we need to redo one or more of the tracks. We could decide later that we need a different sound, tempo, or key. Saving these tracks will allow these changes to be made without replaying the parts. These tracks will be muted and hidden. Creating a MIDI group is an option that allows us to hide and show them as a group. Once this process is complete, we have a permanent recording of the sound and we no longer are dependent on the availability of the software instrument. This will provide a consistent sound in future versions of the software, different systems, and different DAWs.